Hi, my name is Briyonna G, and today I'll be talking about Section 230 of the Decency Act of 1996. On the website Ballotpedia, Section 230 is a federal law that protects internet service providers and website companies from being held liable for most of the content created by users of their services, and this includes anything that could be considered false or defamatory. So this could be something that affects a public figure, for example. They may want to sue a company or a user for defamation. Well, Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act will protect internet service providers like Twitter, for example, or AT&T from being held liable for certain acts that are happening on their websites that they manage. So today, we're going to look at how Section 230 is a benefit to us when it comes to protecting our rights as those third party users. If we ever are someone who posts something that is maybe a question, and then how it benefits the service providers and allows for us to have more freedom of speech. Section 230 provides immunity to internet service providers when it comes to third party users posting anything that may be unlawful, may cause damage, may cause harmful or unlawful actions to take place, anything that a third party user does that an internet service provider would essentially want their hands free of if there were any legal ramifications based on their actions. And so Section 230 provides immunity to that, but it does not provide immunity wholly. There are opportunities for a internet service provider like Twitter or AT&T to be held responsible, and there are cases where that's occurred, where they are held responsible based on their actions, moving from service provider to a publisher. If they are a publisher, then they are not covered by that Section 230 immunity. So, in our textbook, it talks about how there are certain tests that they look for. So, adopted or ratified, the defamatory statements. You may think that if a internet service provider publishes it, or they maybe even posted in different places that the third party person did not. It doesn't mean that they've published it. Essentially, it just means that they may even um, agree with it, and they may add comments agreeing with it. But as an internet service provider, if they're not adding to that content in any way, then they still have that immunity by that 230 section 230. In most instances, we're talking about defamation when it comes to whether or not an internet service provider should be held responsible for this. And so our textbook describes defamation in multiple ways, but a couple examples of the definitions are words or images that are false or injurious to another person, words or images that tend to harm the reputation of another person or lower them in the community, words or images that subject a person to loss of goodwill or confidence from others. And so, in a lot of cases, we see defamation being called out or libel. Another website, NOLA.com, says defamation happens when someone makes a false statement about you, verbally or written, that damages your reputation. Verbal defamation is called slander. Written defamation is called libel. And so in our textbook, it's talking about how Section 230 is applied to that type of defamation and whether or not internet service providers as a whole should be held responsible. So we're going to look at a case here that talks about an internet service provider interacting in a certain way that causes them to lose that immunity. There was a case where it involved modeling mayhem networking and a woman who's identified as Jane Doe. And basically, in this particular case, this woman was connecting and communicating on their website, on this internet service provider's website. And as a result, she met up with someone thinking it was for a legitimate job and was ended up being abused, raped, drugged. It was a horrible situation. And so she sued this internet service provider, stating that they were fully aware that there were harmful individuals on their website and they failed to identify them or to at least make aware to users that there was potential harm that could come to them in meeting up with these people. And so, modeling mayhem networking was held responsible and were not protected by Section 230 in this instance because they knew of the information and they failed to share it with their users. And so, in the case of Section 230, it's not something where this gives full total immunity to an internet service provider to do whatever they want. In fact, it basically protects them from um, being held responsible for things that are being sent out to the public through individuals. It's allowing for users to maintain freedom of speech, in that they're able to separate the two. If we had a bunch of internet service providers being held responsible for how we communicate, I feel like we would eventually have less places for us to have an open forum to speak as freely as we want to. And then we would also have a lot more monitoring. We'd have a lot more censoring. We'd have a lot of flags on our posts. It would just require so much oversight, a little bit more of a big brother in order to ensure that they weren't being sued constantly and held financially responsible for the things that individuals post. I think they're giving us a platform to speak. The individual has the responsibility and the burden of ensuring that the information that they share is truthful, and that if they do go to post something of an opinion or a fact, the individual who does so, as long as the internet service provider does not engage, that individual should be the one that's held responsible, not the internet service provider. Again, having them engage in what we're posting, having them monitor it on our behalf is going to cause us to have less places to do it. And it's going to cause internet service providers to begin censoring and choosing what they pull off of the internet. In reality, we have less freedom. So this is less about internet service providers not wanting to take responsibility for something and more about protecting our true freedom to speak out and to say what we want to say. I think us as individuals then have to take on that responsibility, and that burden.